motion. And I'm just going to show you these really quick so that you have an idea. Last week, we focused mostly on hip flexion and extension, along with ankle flexion and extension. We also have abduction and adduction, so taking the leg out and in. And then we have external rotation, so taking the leg out or rotating it out or in. These are sometimes the trickiest. So more of today's focus is going to be on this and rotation. Okay, so with that, we will start lying on our bellies. So stack your hands one on top of the other. Separate your feet so that your feet are mat distance apart. You can close your eyes. And just start to breathe. And so in this position of lying on your belly, it's easy to feel, or more easy sometimes to feel, diaphragmatic breathing. And what that might feel like is an expansion of the side of your rib cage and the back of your rib cage. So we have been conditioned to belly breathe. And that intention is awesome because we're taking the breath low into the body, which is good. We want to take the breath low because when we take the breath low, the primary muscle of respiration, which is your diaphragm, is more readily used. However, the diaphragm also attaches to the side and the back of the rib cage. So if we focus on just pushing the belly out all the time, we don't feel that full expansion, that full contraction of the diaphragm that creates that intra-abdominal pressure that gives us the full capacity of spinal stability. So just continue to feel this expansion as you breathe in, and the softening of the belly and the ribs as you exhale out. And draw the chin towards your throat, lengthening the back of your neck and creating a little space across the front of your collarbones, and almost as if you're trying to create space between your shoulder blades as well. So avoiding that tendency to squeeze the shoulder blades together, do the opposite. See if you can traction your shoulder blades apart, almost as if you're trying to pull your elbows apart to create more space. On your next inhalation, expand your rib cage out. Take your hands out from underneath your head and just lift your head off your hands. Keep drawing the chin towards the throat. The elbows don't move. We're just taking the hands out slightly. And see if you can continue to maintain that diaphragmatic contraction with your inhale. It helps to support your spine and the slight extension. And then bring the elbows under as you roll onto your side. So whatever side you need to roll onto that you can face me. And bring your elbow to the floor and support your hand, or support your head with your hand. We're going to keep our legs, our hips, and our shoulders all in one line. So if the feet come forward, we're using the feet for support. We want to stay all in one line. We can use the gut pressure, so the inhalation into the ribs, to find the support that we need to balance on the side body. You can bring your hand out in front, bend the knee that's on the floor up to 90 degrees. So the knee's in line with the hip and the ankle's in line with the knee. The top foot, the inner edge of the foot, presses down. So you're pressing down the inner edge. This heel stays in line with the hip and the shoulder. Bring your hand to your rib cage, expand into your rib cage. And then bring your hand to your knee. The hand on your knee is just a guide that the knee stays down. Flex your foot that's on the floor and just start to move the foot, the lower leg up and down. So the knee stays where it is so that we feel the rotation of the leg and the hip socket. So as you're doing this, draw awareness into the top of the leg bone inside the hip socket and just notice. Feel it roll around. Awareness is key. The next time you bring the leg up, keep it up. Now, I've been working on this a lot, so just so you know, I can really bring my leg up into external rotation. I'm also like genetically predisposed to external rotation, so this is really easy for me. Your top hand is gonna come to the calf. We're not trying to overpower, we're just building a slight resistance between the two. So you're pressing your calf into your fingers and your fingers into your calf, just to see what you feel light up in your hip. So notice where in your hip you feel this. And just so you know, your upper leg contains your hip muscles. So if you feel it in the legs too, just make a note. Release it and see if you can take it up a little bit more. So we're using the principle of PNF, or contract, relax, to create a little bit more space. Bring the leg down. Keep the knee where it is, rotate it up. Bring the hand to the outside, so bring it behind your calf. Fingers are up to the outside of your calf and push into your fingers this way. Fingers pull back, and again, it's a light resistance. It's just building awareness. So when we overpower, we revert to some of our cheats. So just finding that awareness and where you feel it in your hip. And I'm not telling you where because it might be different for other people. Release and bring the leg back down. Bring your top hand in front, lift up and roll to the other side. So elbow on the floor, hand supports the head. Make sure all of your joints are in alignment. So heels, hips, shoulders, hand on the rib cage. Expand out to find that diaphragmatic pressure, that gut pressure. You can bring your hand forward, or you can move without the hand to challenge the core. Knee in line with your hip. Ankle and knee in line, so 90-degree bend. Notice if the hip rocks back or forward and stack it on top of the other hip. Inner edge of the top foot presses down for support. Hand on the knee as a reminder not to move. And then start to move the lower leg. And notice, I mean, most likely you're gonna feel a difference. One side's gonna be a little easier. It's gonna rotate a little bit better. No judgment here, just acknowledge it. Next time you come up, stay up. Take your fingers from your top hand and just lightly press into your calf and push back with your calf into your fingers. If you feel anything else engage, push less. So you just want to feel what creates that sensation of pushing up into your fingers. If you feel it in your back, you're pushing too hard. If you feel it in your jaw, your tongue, you're pushing too hard. Release. And then bring it up again. Wrap your hand behind your calf, bring it to the outside, and push the opposite way. Relax everything except for what you feel going on in your hip. So you're just kind of realizing, this is stuff that I don't normally feel. Let it go. See if you can bring your leg up a little higher. So we're creating more space by using contraction. Release. And then come back down onto your belly. Lift up onto your elbows and deciding how far forward or how far back you can keep your elbows. Take your left hand and bring it towards your right elbow, and then move your right elbow out of the way. So you're using your forearm of your left hand as support. Again, you can take it forward. You don't have to be into a large extension. Just kind of gauge where you can be to lift up slightly. Press the front of your left foot and your left thigh into the floor. Bend your right heel towards your hip. You're gonna reach behind with your right hand and push your fingers into your heel and your heel into your fingers. So this is an interesting sensation, right? You might feel some cramping in your hamstring. And this is just a signal that perhaps your hamstring hasn't been as active as it could be. We often think that our hamstrings are tight. Well, typically they're tight and short, meaning they don't work. Tight and weak, meaning they're not very active. Go ahead and release. Release the foot back to the floor. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Press up to hands and knees. Just gonna go into down dog for a second, just to stretch the hamstring out. So tuck your toes under. Hover your knees off the floor. Press the hips back, and then lift the hips as you move towards straightening your knees. So you'll feel a stretch in your hamstring. But as you're here, notice, does that hamstring maybe move the heel a little closer to the floor? And then lower your knees to the ground. Come back onto your belly. This time, rest your forehead on your left hand. Plant your left foot on the ground. Kick your right heel towards your foot or towards your butt. Reach your right hand behind and grab the front of your right foot with your right hand. If you can reach back with your left hand and grab as well, great. If not, and if you can't reach back and grab, just kick your heel towards your hip or maybe use a belt or a resistance band to pull it closer. So we're stretching your quad and a little bit of the hip flexors. And start to push the front of your foot into your hands, so building that resistance. So asking the quad to engage in a shortened position. Or in a lengthened position. So we're eccentrically engaging your quad. Release the resistance and then release the leg. Stack your hands underneath your forehead. Keep your left leg where it is and bend your right knee out to the side. So like a frog. Knee, if you can, bring it up in line with your hip. But if that's too much or you feel your right hip hiking too much, just bring it down. So wherever you can bring it in the range that you have available. Flex your right ankle, so dorsiflex. Keep pressing your left leg strongly into the floor. Keep your knee where it is and lift your right lower leg off the floor. Take it down. Lift it up. Take it down. So explore this range. This is internal rotation. The next time you lift it up, keep it up. And then bring the right leg beside the left leg. So coming into just a heel kick towards your hip. Then start to turn your right foot towards your left thigh as you bend the knee out and slide it back into that frog position. Lift the right lower leg off the floor, so internal rotation, and slide your right thigh back beside your left thigh. Take the heel towards your left thigh, shin towards your left thigh, so we're turning into external rotation. Slide it out into that frog position. And then take the leg up, lower leg up, internal rotation, and slide it back. So do this one more time, feeling how the leg bone rotates in the hip socket, because we're going to go to the same action in a different position. Notice that the pelvis stays almost still. Lower the right leg down to the ground, hands underneath your shoulders, press up to hands and knees. So shoulders underneath, above your wrist, knees underneath your hips. Tuck both toes under. Lift your right heel off the ground. So engage the hamstring to kick the heel as close to your hip as you can. And then we're going to find that internal and external rotation. So as you kick the heel towards the left thigh, we're taking the hip into external rotation. So you feel the bone move out. And as you take the heel out to the side, the upper leg bone is rotating in, so internal rotation. So just do that a couple of times, feeling minimal movement in your pelvis. So you can return to that diaphragmatic contraction with the inhalation to support the spine and to help stabilize the hip. So if you feel your hips wiggle side to side, minimize the movement a little bit more. And come back to center. Bring your knees together. Shift the weight onto your left leg and lift just your knee off the floor. Notice if your left hip cocks out to the side and hug it in. So the left hip is going to stabilize through all this. Take your right leg straight out to the side without lifting the hip. So notice if the side of the hip moves up towards the rib and draw it down. Notice if the back of the hip lifts up higher than the right. So external rotation. Take the leg back. And then draw the knee in towards your chest. Take the right knee out to the side, external rotation. Start to turn the sole of the foot up towards the sky, knee goes down. Internal rotation, take it back, extension, and bring it through. So we're going in the opposite direction. Take the leg straight back, so hip extension. Start to take the heel to the left as the knee turns out, hip doesn't. Take the knee out to the side, external rotation, and take it forward. One more time. Take it back into extension. Heel drops to the left, knee turns to the right. Take it out to the side and through. Take the knee straight back. Turn the heel out to the right. So knees turning in, so we're in internal rotation. Lift your knee a little higher without lifting your hip and stretch the leg back. So extension, getting the hamstring a stretch. Lift up onto your fingertips. Bend the knee towards your chest and step your right leg up between your hands. And if you need to come out of it to take the foot up there, by all means do so. Hands on either side of your right foot. Start to lean forward and step your left foot up beside your right foot. Shift your weight on your left foot. So that's the leg that's already been stabilizing. And press up and bring right knee forward. Hands to your hips. Pull the hips down. Rotate right heel in, right knee out. So external rotation. Take it out to the side. Notice if the hip hikes. Take it in. So we're still finding that gut pressure. So when you lose balance, see if you can use the breath to create more stability. So the hips are working hard. Bend the knee in, stop here. Take your awareness to your left hip, pop the hip out. Use that awareness of bringing it in, so those muscles, to suck it in. Pop it out, suck it in. Pop it out, suck it in. Hands to the hips. Turn the foot in, heel in. Turn it out. Start to take the leg back. Reach it back. Step it back. Other foot comes back. Drop the knees to the floor. and come down onto your belly. Forehead rest on your hands. Keep your elbows where they are and bring your hands forward. Press your left foot into the floor or right foot into the floor. Kick your left heel towards your hip. Bring your left hand towards or right hand towards your left elbow. Reach behind with your left hand. Find your heel. So you might have to open up a little bit and start to push hand into foot, foot into heel. So you want to activate your hamstring. If you can't reach, just kick your heel as close to your butt as you can. So you want to activate your glutes and your hamstrings. Want to wake them up. Release. Bring both hands under your shoulders, press up to hands and knees. Tuck your toes under. Lift your knees off the floor, press back and move towards straightening your legs. So the first sensation might be, because the hamstring is tight. But as you breathe into it, firming the front of your thighs, so engaging your quads, can you take your heels a little closer to the floor? Release the knees to the floor. Come down onto your belly again. You can either rest with your hands on your forehead, or you can bring the hands forward and challenge upper back extension. Kick. Again, left heel towards your hip. Reach behind if you can and grab your left foot with your left hand. Maybe taking your right hand behind and grabbing the front of your foot as well. So flexibility comes with engagement. So start to press your hands into, or your hands into your feet and your feet into your hands. So engage your quad. Creating a mild resistance in order to get the quads to engage in a lengthened state. Then release and see if you can pull your heel a little closer to your hip. Release the leg. Bring the hands back underneath your forehead. Kick your left heel towards your hip again. Turn your left foot towards your right thigh as the knee turns out. Slide the knee out to the side, so coming into external rotation. Lift your lower leg off the ground, foot flexed, ankle flexed, and then slide your left leg back beside your right. So coming back into that internal rotation or neutral. Drop left shin towards right thigh, knee turns out, slide it up. And then lift lower leg off the ground, internal rotation, slide it back. Do this a couple of more times. Notice if your outer left hip glides up towards your rib cage. It will to an extent, but try to minimize it to keep the rotation more in the hip socket than in using the hips. Notice that the pelvis, when you're lying on the ground, is in neutral. So you're not hiking up the back of the hip to lift the leg up. These are the movements that we want to feel when we take it into that tabletop position. So the next time you come up, lift up to hands and knees. Shoulders above the wrists, knees below the hips. Tuck your toes under. Kick left heel towards your hip as much as you can. So we want a little bit of that hamstring activation, and then start to take left foot towards right thigh, and then take left heel out. So as you do this, again, notice your pelvis. You want to minimize the movement in the pelvis and keep it all in the hip socket. There will be a slight tilt, but try to minimize that by engaging the core using that diaphragmatic contraction with the inhalations. Come back to neutral. Bring the knees together. So that brings the right knee slightly inward so you can balance a little better. Keep the pelvis where it is and just lift the left leg out to the side as much as it can. So you're not trying to lift it as high as it goes, just lifting it as high as you can. Then rotate the heel up, knee down, take it back, extension, and then draw the knee in towards the chest. Start to take it out to the side, moving from the joint, turn the foot up, knee down, take it back. Bring it forward, flexion, and then take it the opposite direction. So left knee comes back, hip stays where it is. Drop the heel toward the right, knee turns out. Draw the knee up. Notice if the hip's trying to go. Keep it down. Bring it through center. One more time. Take it back. Heel in, knee out. Out to the side. Flexion. Take the knee back. Take the heel out, knee turns in. From what you feel in your hamstring, stretch the leg back into extension. Come up onto your fingertips. Draw your knees towards your chest. And then however you can get your left foot up between your hands, do that. Shift forward, so deepen your hip crease. And then bring your right foot beside your left foot. So we're gonna balance on our right foot. So hands to your hips, keep the pelvis in neutral, expand the ribs. Lift, left knee forward. So rotate the foot in, rotate it out. And you may find one way is easier for you. For me, external rotation is so easy. Internal rotation is a struggle for me. So I can barely get my foot to go out to the side. Neutralize the pelvis, come back to center. So let's find those muscles. So we're gonna push the hip, right hip out, and then squeeze the glutes to bring it back in. So this teaches us what we use to stabilize it. So notice as you push the hip out, how unstable it is. And as you suck it in, you like find that like grounding action. Hands to your hips. Turn the left foot in and then turn it out. As you turn it out, take it all the way back, step to the back of your mat into a lunge. Lower hands to the ground. Step back to plank this time. Roll your inner thighs up towards the sky. So we're engaging the front of the thighs. So press the front of the thighs back. Can you find that action of the hips that you just felt when you pushed the hips out and then sucked it in? So suck the hips in to find the stabilizing of the outer hips and this plank pose to create stability. And then press back to downward facing dog. Firm the front of the thighs, press them back. So if downward facing dog ever becomes too much, always have the option to go to tabletop. These same actions will work in tabletop. Step your feet hip distance apart. Shift your weight to your left leg and just lift your right foot off the ground. Firm the front of your left thigh, pressing the leg bone back. See if you can find the outer hip to suck the outer hip in. And then lift your left leg or your right leg straight up and back. Kick the heel to the hip. Keep stabilizing your left leg as you rotate the pelvis on top of the leg bone. So open up your right hip, but have the action, the strength be in the left leg. So the outer hip hugs in, front of the thigh is firm. Square your hips, knee stays bent. Bend your right knee towards your chest as you come onto your left toes. Firm the front of the left thigh to press the hips back, stretch the right leg long. Bend the right knee, come onto your left toes, draw knee towards chest. Come up onto your right fingertips and step your right foot up between your hands. Or come down to your knees and bring it all the way up. So however you need to get the right foot up, into this long lunge, take the time to do that. Take your right hand outside of your right knee. Use it to push your knee forward as you resist your knee out into your hand. So you're creating that resistance again. So push the knee out as you bend. Notice where you feel it. I feel it in the outer hip. You may feel it in the hamstrings. Keep the strength of the leg to lift up. So you may want to narrow your stance. So if you need to come the left foot forward more, or maybe you need to widen how far your feet are apart so that you have more stability. Keep your right hand on your hip. This is going to get hard. Bend your left knee and hover it above the floor. Keep pulling down with your right hand and move towards straightening your back leg without lifting your right hip. Bend your left knee. Reach the heel back to straighten the leg. So we're doing some hamstring work here. Bend. Reach through your heel to straighten. Bend. Keep the knee bent and swing the left knee open to face the long edge of your mat. So you're coming into goddess pose. So knees are above your heels. Take the hands inside your knees. Press hands and knees together as you take your tailbone towards the floor. Create that gut pressure and then sink a little deeper. Hands come on top of the thighs. Keep pushing the knees out. Take your left shoulder forward. Come up. Take your right shoulder forward. Come up. Left. Do you feel your hips? Right. Up. Hands outside of your knees. Press out. Woo! Hands to your hips. Start to fold forward with knees bent. Hands to the floor. Straighten your legs. Toes turn to face the long edge of your mat. Firm the front of your thighs. Press them back. Lift and spread your sit bones. So let's play with this a little bit. Let all the power of your legs go. So don't engage anything. And just notice what you feel in your hamstrings and your hips. Slow down your breath. And then lift up onto your fingertips. So engage your shoulders. Press through the inner edges of your feet. Notice what you feel in your legs. Press through the outer edges of your feet. Notice what you feel in your legs. Firm the front of your thighs as if you're trying to lift your kneecaps with the quads. And notice what you feel in the back of your legs. Keep this awareness of your legs and slowly lower into a forward fold. Keep the inner edges of the feet working, inner thighs work. Outer edges of the feet working, outer hips work. Front of the thighs, create more space in the backs of the thighs. Lift up halfway. Turn your right toes to the front of your mat. Walk your hands to either side of the front of your foot. Lift your back heel off the ground. Firm the front of your left thigh. Step right foot beside left. Firm the front of that thigh. Inhale into your rib cage. Drop your knees to the floor. Toes face down. Lower your elbow or reach your elbows towards your hips. Reach your collarbones forward as you lower down onto your belly. Press the front of the feet, thighs, hips. Inhale, lift your head, lift your chest. Then press through your hands. Lift up, cobra pose. Come through hands and knees. Tuck the toes and press back to downward facing dog. Firm the front of the thighs, press them back. Roll your inner thighs to the wall behind you. Reach your outer hips towards the wall behind you. Keep the strength of your right leg. Lift your left leg straight up and back. Grow awareness more in your right leg. So keep that leg strong. Hug the outer hip in, bend the left knee, kick the heel towards the hip as you reach the knee towards the sky. So the right hip is an external rotation. As long as we have that awareness of the pelvis rotating over the hip socket or leg bone. Square your hips, so feel the pelvis roll back to neutral. Keep the knee bent. Lift up onto your right toes, draw knee to nose. So taking it into flexion, left hip into flexion. Reach back, extension, knee stays bent. Lift up onto the toes, knee to chest. Come up onto your left fingertips and bring your left foot up between your hands, however you can get it there. So front of the right thigh is super strong. So hug the muscles to the bones to lift the back of the thigh a little higher. Sink deep into your front hip crease. Take your left hand to the outside of your left knee. You're going to kind of use it to scoot the knee forward, but at the same time, press the knee out into the hands so you feel the outer hip turn on to stabilize. Use that stabilization to come up. Left hand on the hip, knee still pushing out, hip still hugging in. So if you notice the knee flipping in, bring it to neutral by hugging this hip in. Keep the hands on your hips. Keep pulling down with the left knee as you bend the right knee and hover it above the floor. Keep this hip low. So keep pulling it down and simply reach the left heel back to straighten the left leg. Right leg, bend. Push through the back heel to straighten the back leg. Bend. It's hard. Push to reach. Bend again. Keep the front knee bent, keep the back knee bent, and simply twist the back knee open to come back into goddess pose. Hands inside the knees. As you sink deeper, resist them towards each other. Then hands to the thighs. Right shoulder drops in. Lift up. So this is that deceivingly difficult part. We're doing simple movements with a lot of awareness to activation. It makes it challenging. Hands behind the knees, press back, sink deeper. Stay in that goddess as you fold. Hands to the floor, straighten the knees, toes face the long edge of your mat. Let the muscles of your legs relax. Maybe even bending one knee slightly, the other knee, and just rocking back and forth. So let all that work go. And then come up under your fingertips. Press down through your fingertips to lift your spine parallel to the floor. Press through the outer edges of your feet. Drag the outer edges towards the back edge of your mat. Feel that light up parts of your hips. Inner edges, draw back. Feel where that lights up. Firm the front of your thighs as if they were hugging the bones to lift the kneecaps. And then as you exhale, hinge from your hips to fold. See if you can connect to the muscles of your inner thighs and your outer hips to engage them. And notice what that does to the tension in your hips that hold you back from folding. Lift up onto your fingertips. Turn your left toes to face the front edge of your mat. Walk your hands on either side of your left foot, coming onto your right toes. Firm the right thigh. Firm the outer right hip. Step left foot beside. Firm the left thigh, outer left hip. Roll the inner thighs up. Bend the knees to the floor. Send the hips towards the heels. So like child's pose, drop the elbows towards the floor and slide between your hands. Toes point back. Activate the legs. Press the feet down, thighs down. Lift the head, lift the chest. Press into the hands. Elbows draw back, chest lifts. Cobra. Come through hands and knees. Tuck the toes under. Firm the front of the thighs to lift the hips up and back. I'm going to take about 5 breaths here. So if you need to take a break, you can rest in tabletop or child's pose. So bringing awareness back into the breath. Returning to that awareness of the side and the back ribs expanding as well as the belly. Letting go of tension in your jaw, your tongue, your neck. And if you are in child's pose or tabletop, you have the option to stay in tabletop or come back to downward facing dog. Firm the left thigh. Reach the right leg up and back into three-legged dog. Keep the legs straight and turn the toes out, but keep the pelvis squared forward. Bend the right knee out to the side. Shift forward and touch knee to shoulder or bring it close. Take it back. Straighten the right leg straight up behind you. Keep your left leg strong. Turn the right toes out. Bend the right knee out to the side without moving the pelvis. And then bring right knee to right shoulder. Drop the knee under your chest and step the right foot up between your hands. Firm the outer right hip. If you need the hand as that reminder, you can use it. Otherwise, use the strength of the hip to press up into your high lunge. So come up and watch for a second. So you get to take a break. Watch this movement. It's really funky. And it's a lot of hip work. So we're, again, using muscles to stabilize. So from this bent low lunge or high lunge, I'm just gonna open and then go back. So balance takes that diaphragm, which is hard to use when you're talking. So open and close. Open and close. Not quite that fast. Okay, so right foot forward, left foot back. Feet about hip distance apart for balance. Hands on the hips. Breathe into the diaphragm, hover, left knee. Keep both knees bent and open into goddess. Keep both knees bent. Left knee comes in, come back into the lunge. 2 more times. Open, knee in, open, pause. Hands to your hips, sink a little deeper. Bring the hands inside, side bend. Other side. Up, side bend. Last time. Hands to the knees, turn the toes in, come all the way up. Outer edges of your feet press down, inner edges press down. Hands to your hip creases, firm the front of the thighs. Push the hips back to fold. And once you're folded, allow the hips to shift forward slightly. Come up onto your fingertips. Firm the front of the thighs. Hands behind the back. Clasp your hands together. Press the fist behind you. Exhale. Release your head towards the floor. Keep the legs strong so that you can release more of the upper body. So we have a stable base to create more space in the upper body. Notice your diaphragmatic breathing. Release the hands, press up halfway. Walk the hands towards the front of your mat on either side of your right foot. Firm the left thigh, step, right leg back. So you can either lower down, knees, chest, chin, or engage core by the breath and lower all the way down. Inhale, scoop, head, chest forward and up. You can keep hips on the floor or press the feet to firm the thighs. Up dog, press back down dog. Catch your breath. We have one more side. And we get to see what all this work has done to the hips with the final few stretches. So shift your weight into your right leg. Keep that leg super strong as you lift. Left leg back. Hips square towards the floor. Just turn the leg out. So toes turn out, leg bone turns out. Come up onto your right toes, look between your hands. Bring knee towards shoulder. Come up. Square the hips. Turn the toe and the knee out. Bend the knee out to the side without moving the hips. And then shift forward. Drop the knee under the chest. Step left foot up between your hands. Or bring it up there, however you can get it up there. Engage the outer hip. So stabilize. Lift up. Hands to the hips. Press the knee out slightly as you hug the left hip in. Hover. Right knee above the floor. Keep the hips low. Open up. Goddess. Keep the knees bent. Turn left knee or right knee in. Lunge. Keep the knees bent. Open. Keep the knees bent. Close. One more time. Open. Hands inside the knees. Sink a little deeper. Find that resistance. Side bend. Reach up. Left hand towards foot. Side bend. Lift up. Last time to the right. Can you feel those hips? Last time to the left. Come up. Straighten the legs. Turn the toes forward. Firm the front of the thighs. Slowly shift the hips back to fold forward. Hands to the ground. Fingertips press down, lift halfway up. Inner edge presses down. Outer edge presses down. Firm the hips, firm the thighs, hands behind the back, opposite grip. Punch the fist back. Inhale. As you exhale, let it go, fold. Notice where you're holding tension that's not necessary. That can show up in your jaw, your throat, your neck, your toes. Are you clenching your toes? Use your thighs. Use the muscles of your hips for what they're built for, to stabilize, to mobilize. Release the hands on either side forward. Press up. Walk your hands to the front of your mat, hands on either side of your left foot. Find strength of the back leg and hip. Step, left leg back. Find the strength in both legs and hips. Either knees, chest, chin, or lower all the way down, chaturanga. Scoop, head, chest forward and up. Either on your knees or knees lift. Press back, down dog. Drop your knees to the floor. Knees wide, toes touch, child's pose. So simple movements with awareness, not so simple. Simple movements with activation can be challenging, but create strength and stability that helps to build the support for healthy hips, healthy spine, healthy ambulation or movement. These are movements that we learned when we were children, when we were infants and toddlers, as we developed in order to mobilize in this great, big, beautiful world. But as we grow older and we sit and we injure ourselves, we forget these movements. We forget how to use what our body naturally has to create safe and healthy movement. And it's just a process of reteaching ourselves to allow for that feeling of discomfort, that feeling of struggle, because every time we come across struggle and we conquer that, we learn, we grow, we change. And from that, we can find the inspiration to face more struggles. Go ahead and come up. So all that work, now we get to stretch it out. We get to see how that work pays off. So come into a seated position with your heels on the ground, toes up. Heels are wider than your hips. This is a little bit of a hip flexion. Notice if you have that tendency to rock back, engage into the ribs and come slightly forward. And take both of our knees to the right. Be in line with the hips and the ankles in line with your knees. It's a little bit more challenging. You can also bring where your knee, did my sound just go off? Is it back on? Could you hear me? Okay. So you can rest with your knee in your foot. Take your hand to your thigh and twist slightly forward. Bring your hands on either side of your front knee. You're just going to slightly walk forward. And you're going to use kind of your awareness of what you have to decide how deep you fold forward. So maybe your belly come and rest on the inside of your thigh. Maybe you've created enough space and you have to test this out. Maybe you can rest your forehead on your hands. Maybe you can rest your forehead on the floor and stretch your arms forward. So in this position, we're relaxed in our front hip, our right hip. You may feel a stretch, that's good. But have a little activation in your back hip by rotating as if you were going to take your sit bone towards the floor. It will not reach, but just move in that direction to feel a little bit more space in the side of your left side body. If you have your hands on the ground, you can even walk your hands a little bit forward to create even more space in that left side body. Notice if you can still breathe easily into your side ribs and back. If your belly's on your thigh, you may find that easily. And walk your hands underneath your shoulders. Use your hands to push yourself up. So a little bit of activation. Bring that knee forward so it is in line with your hip. Shift forward and lift your left leg off the ground. Knee two. Bring the hands to the floor and then stretch it behind you. So we're coming into a pigeon pose, which everyone loves. So use your toes to bring your foot as far back behind you as you can. So your front hip is in flexion and external rotation, while your back hip is an extension and internal rotation. So tuck the back toes under, lift the knee, and just roll the thigh closer to the floor. So your knee, the top of your knee is on the floor. You can stay upright. You can bring your elbows to the floor. You can bring your forehead if you have a block, or you can stack your fist one on top of the other kind of just noticing where you feel you need to go in your hips. Cues to know if you are too deep, you're holding your breath. You're clenching your toes. You're clenching your hips. So see if you can soften a little bit. Sometimes I find just kind of like jiggling my hips side to side helps me let go of tension that I don't need to be holding on to. And once I can feel it let go, I let it completely go and just relax into it. Use your hands to press yourself up. Bring your left foot around. We're kind of gonna back into that hip flexion pose, feet wide, ankles flexed. Turn the opposite way. So decide if you're gonna be in that 90-90 position or if you need your knee resting in the arch of your left foot. Walk your hands on either side of your left knee and walk to where you feel you can soften. So not forcing the stretch, pushing through barriers, pushing through resistance does not create more space. What we did today, that creating activation, following it with a stretch, is more effective than pushing ourselves too deeply into a stretch. Reach your right sit bone towards the floor a little bit more to create more space. You should be able to breathe easily. You should be able to feel the lack of tension in your jaw. And use your hands underneath your shoulders to press yourself up. Bring this knee back slightly, this knee forward. Shift your weight into your left hip to lift your right leg off the ground. And then stretch the leg behind you. Tuck your toes under so that you can bring the top of your knee to the floor. This left heel may come closer to your hip. If it needs to, let it. And then lower down to the point where you feel your barrier and respect that edge. So when we force ourselves through things, we fail to have those opportunities to learn. We fail to have the opportunities to be persistent and patient with the process. And oftentimes we find that we have to continue to return again and again and again because of that forceful method. It doesn't always work. It's a give and take. So being aware of where you are today and having respect for your body and what it's showing you is the best way to move through your physical barriers. Slowly use your hands to press yourself up. Take the leg behind you, swing it all the way around and come onto your back. Hug your knees in towards your chest and gently rock side to side. Bring a hand to each knee and draw circles in opposite directions. So in other words, take the knees out, take the knees down, take them in and draw them up. So making circles and then switch directions. So just notice what you've done. Notice how your work has paid off. And when you are ready, stretch your legs long to the ground. Adjust to feel an even amount of weight of hips and shoulders. Draw your chin towards your throat to lengthen the back of your neck. And now as we lie on our backs, can you create that sense of expansion in your breath, in your diaphragm? Having that same sense of patience, having that same sense of non-attachment of what is the perfect way to breathe. We're not trying to force, we're trying to explore what is available today. Is this a new feeling of breathing? Is it challenging? Is it easeful? When we let go of expectations, does it become more easeful? As we become curious with the process, does it become less effortless or less effort and more effortless? Start to reach your arms over your head and stretch. Bending your knees. Roll onto your side body. Keeping your head heavy and your eyes closed. And slowly press yourself up to a seated position. And bring awareness to the space of our stability, our center of gravity, your hips. And just notice as you come into this final seat, what does it feel like to sit? And bring your hands to heart center. And bow your head into your hands, acknowledging that space deep within, the space of your true self, your true being, your present. And thank you so much. The divine in me honors the divine in you. Namaste.